Hello viewers, within Gran Turismo 7 we have a new set of license tests within the game, and these are the new Master License tests. In this video I'm going to go through all of National B, A, International B and International A. Super License will follow in another video. So if you compare it to the normal license tests here, the gold requirement time is actually quite a lot harder to get. Now unfortunately you can't watch top replay times. You can of course look at the top 10 stars to see what the best times are, but you can't watch any replays. They do have a demonstration, and this gives you a good overall idea of what to do. So for example, in this test, it gets a 33.3, and that's good enough for gold. So these demonstrations are good enough. What I'd also recommend doing is turning on Ghost. So I have my personal best with no offset. And so when you jump into the event, you have a reference point. So you know if you're going right or if you know if you're going wrong, just like that. I know I'm going quicker now. You also might want to go into the settings up here. Go to controllers, then make sure show and hide ghost is mapped so you can turn the ghost on and off. With all of that said, let's jump into the guide. There's timestamps at the bottom if you want to jump to a specific test. But starting off with Master B1. So yes, the first test, B1, starting and stopping on a wet track. So this is your standard stop-start test. Starting with full power, full throttle, off the line. That seemed to be fine. I didn't bother with traction control for this. You're kind of okay without it in this kind of car. Shifting at the end of the rev gauge, no further than that. And braking, pretty much exactly on the 100 board, level with the 100 board. Make sure you brake in one big moment rather than coming off the brake, going back on it. And that time was about 3/10 quicker than the gold requirement. B2 is the same sort of test, but in a much more powerful rear-wheel drive car, the Dodge Viper. And here's what happens if you don't turn on traction control. As you can see, the car becomes a slidey mess on this wet surface, and so that is not advisable. You definitely want to turn traction control on. In terms of power off the line, I found that about 90% was good, as sometimes 100% will just wheel spin. And as you shift up gears, I was lifting off the power quite a lot as well. Braking just before the 100 board, and again just make sure you're fully committed on the brake. I could have even done this one a bit better, but that was good enough for gold. B3, this is cornering basics 1, and you know what, this one's actually fairly simple. It's definitely a test you can overcomplicate, but you can go through this corner flat out. You do not need to lift off the power. Turning just underneath that 50 board, aim your inside wheels for the green on the other side of the red and white curb, and that's kind of a good reference point. And that one I was able to do it first time, but improved to a 17.105 second time around, or third time around. The next test, B4, is the same sort of test, same corner, same track, but in a slightly faster car, so you do have to brake slightly for this one. References are quite similar, so just before the 50 board, turning underneath that 50 board. And again, aiming for the green on the inside and on the outside, getting on the power by the time you get to the apex. And it's really about carrying the speed through the corner. That one was good enough by 2/10 for the gold medal. B5 is Red Bull Ring, turn number 1. Quite a tricky little corner, this one. So as we come in 5th gear, braking about the 125 meter board, or braking between the 150 and the 100, about halfway between. 3rd gear through the corner, make sure you go over that yellow. Keep 2 wheels on the red and white curb, that's the track limit. Getting on the power nice and early to exit the corner quickly. That one was good enough by about 4/10. It's really about keeping the speed up through the corner. B6 is a sharper corner in the Porsche at Spa, turn 1. Braking at the 100 meter board. Braking straight for a while, turning in 2nd gear. Releasing the power to rotate the car back on the power. Drive up to that yellow sausage curb on the exit for maximum track limits. And then drive to the right hand side at the finish for the straightest line to the end. B7, now this one was a little bit trickier. This car is quite clunky and quite heavy, and therefore it takes a while to go around this sharp corner at Deep Forest. Braking just before the curb on the right hand side. You can use the curve for a bit extra angle. Being really patient mid corner, and as you get back on the power, the car wants to oversteer, so be careful and apply the power gently. Make the most of the track limits on the exit, and that's definitely a tip for this. Keep using the track limits all the way. as much as possible. B8, Master B8, love it. Anyway, this one is a Suzuka Degner 1 and 2 in the Mazda RX-8, braking roughly about 75 meters before the corner, about just before the 50. Make sure you dip 2 wheels onto that curb and braking nice and early here. It's really about just running your right hand wheels across the edge of the curb, maximising the track limits, and I can't stress that enough on all of these tests, just to really learn exactly where you can place the car and maximising the track limits as much as possible. B9, the Sierra Cosworth at Road Atlanta. Did this one first try actually, braking just before that visible white line, really get into that inside and make the most of the camber here. And through this one, I would say keeping it in third gear seemed to be good. It feels quite sluggish, but actually it seemed to just marginally be the better gear. It's about keeping it smooth and of course keeping to the left at the finish for the straightest run to the line. Now B10 is the final exam of National B in the Ford Roadster. Absolutely beautiful classic machine. First couple of corners here at Laguna Seca, so you're trying to spot your braking point, looking to the right hand side, the second board pretty much, or the end of the curb, really carry the speed into that first curb, let the car coast mid corner to let it rotate, then power back out on the other side in a straight line up to third gear. Now I went quite wide here, you can keep the car in third gear for this corner, and that was a bit of a wide line, but it kind of worked, kept the speed up, and it was more than good enough for the gold medal. So that's all of National B done, so 10 tests, and actually the first 2 were actually quite tricky. They actually took me quite a lot of tries, and there it is, National B master license required. And for all of these, the car you drive on the final exam is the car you win once you complete the entire license. So of course we win the Ford Roadster. Moving on to National A, Master A1, so Dragon Trail in the Peugeot 208 GTI. So this one's kind of about patience and track limits once again. So look for that end of that barrier on the right hand side, turn the car in, making the most of the curb, and on this right hander you can dip your right hand wheels into the red to really maximise that, and you should be able to take this left hander flat out. So once you go through that right hander in the middle, you should be flat all the way to the end, keeping it to the left for the straightest run, and that was gold by 4/10. And we move on to A2, which is in a similar vein to earlier, the same couple of corners in a slightly faster car, so this time the Mazda RX-7. So you're kind of just doing the same thing again, but just being a bit more patient with this kind of car because it has more power, and you can see here just being really patient mid-corner, coming off the power. Here I did have a bit more of a lift on the exit there. I didn't get the kindest run over that bump, but I was able to take the left-hander flat out, and again drive to the left, maximise or minimise travel distance to the finish line. A3, this one is the hairpin at Autopolis in the Alfa Romeo Giulia. This one's fairly simple. As you approach, look to the right hand side and you'll see the marker boards braking just before the second one, and keep the car. I went down to second, but you want to be shifting away in third for maximum traction. Second gear, you get a lot of wheel spin. Drive to the right hand side for the straightest run, and that was good enough by 4/10. Taking 2 attempts on that one, but we move on to A4, and this one's quite tricky, I'll be honest. This one took me about 4 tries to get a gold, as of course it's Tokyo, you have the walls, you can't hit the walls, as you can see. You have to start again, and even here right at the end just grazing it, so you do have to be very mindful of that. This car is quite fast, quite heavy, being a fast supercar, and therefore it's quite clunky, the feeling. So as we head towards turn 1, braking just before you hit the crest of the hill, releasing the brake at the bottom into the tunnel. Then here you need to be quite patient because it's really easy to power out as the Ghost does, but you get a better drive if you just wait a little bit. Keep to the right hand side here, really prioritise keeping to the right here so that you can maximize your speed through the left into the tunnel at the end. And yeah, that one took me 4 tries, but it was a gold by 4/10 after a couple of goes. As we move on to the first snow driving test, Master A5, and I would say the snow ones are actually quite hard. These ones I struggled with. Now this one was quite weird. I was really trying to work out the exact line that you should take. It's quite tricky. I feel like you need to approach wide and take quite a late apex and really do take quite a racing line pretty much. So here's my full run, as I got a gold on like the 2nd or 3rd try, but approaching from the far left over the blue lines, really throw it in, really be aggressive with the steering to throw the car in and get it sideways, 3rd gear, and then coming out fairly narrow as you can see to minimise the distance to the line. And that seemed to be the best line, but you're going to have to experiment with that one because it's quite an awkward test to get dead right. Moving on to A6, this is at Grand Valley Highway 1 in the Genesis G70. Now this is a heavy clunky car, so the weight transfer feels quite slow. You have to be very patient with it and just make sure you don't get it sideways. So lifting off the power to get the nose to bite into this right-hander, being patient, then making the most of the curb on the left and braking on the 400 meter board. It turned out to be a bit late, as you can see, went a little bit wide of the apex, so maybe brake a tiny bit before. Then maximise the track limits, don't go completely over the white line, keep to the left, and that was good enough by about 1/4 of a second. A7 is the BMW M3 and a couple of a consecutive set of corners here at Dragon Trail, and this car really does want to snap. The rear end does bite quite a lot, so you do have to keep the back end in check. You really don't want to keep it sliding. Keep to the right hand side here to give yourself a fast run through this left, and you can actually carry a lot of speed going completely over the curb on the exit to carry the most speed through the turn. So it's really about maximising the track and keeping the minimum speed up quite high. A8 is the Nissan R33 at Maggiore, a consecutive set of corners, and this one again, track limits so important here. Maximise the entry here on the curb. You can go 2 wheels beyond the curb here, but this right hander is very important. Just drive 2 wheels, the left hand wheels on the curb, to really get yourself a better angle for the left. And once you're going through that left, it's pretty much flat out. You should be able to accelerate all the way to the finish from that point. So it's really about carrying the speed, keeping the exit speed high, and maximising the track fully, and that one should be fine. So that was by 6/10 ahead of the gold time. A9, Porsche 911 Carrera. This one is the tricky hairpin and it's in the wet. So this was my first attempt, braking pretty much on the 150, and that was clearly too late, as you can see. Sailing on. This time I braked on the 150. That seemed to be good. I turned in a little bit late, so you can see here just sailing away from the apex, which wasn't quite visible. And on the exit you can see there's a clear drier line, so try and stick to that. So that was my first gold attempt, but here's my actual best time. So as you approach, again just sticking towards the drier line, as you can see, the darker colour. Braking on the 150 board, just underneath that 150, and just as you get towards the 50, just start turning in, head over the curb, keep the car a bit narrower. You see again a bit of time because of that. Now the car is going to really want to break away from you on the exit here. Watch out on this curb on the left, because there is a puddle in there, and that will kick you around, kick the back end around. And a couple of tries I managed to get a 32.2, and there's definitely more time in that, but it's really about keeping it nicely poised on the exit. So the final exam of National A is in the Mercedes AMG Black Series around Autopolis final sector. Just note this corner here, I took a really bad entry line and really got some bad exit speed. I was able to get a gold first try, but this was my best run. And it's really again about just absolutely maximising the track and the carry speed. So you see they're using all of the curb wherever possible. This car is quite heavy but powerful. It does turn quite slowly. So just be nice and patient. Patience, track limits, and smoothness is just the key here. Going a bit wider this time to take a slightly later apex, and you see the Ghost comparison. I mean, I was way ahead of the Ghost and I gained a couple of tenths there on that corner alone. Patience here again, accelerating away in 4th gear, seemed to be the right gear there, and straight to the line. That was 47.1, so a second and a half quicker than the gold requirements. That one actually wasn't too bad. So after all of that, I now have the National A license, and as before, the car you use in the final exam is the one you get gifted. So there we go, a Mercedes AMG GT Black Series for free. Thank you very much. We move on therefore to the next test, International B. Let's take a look at the first of these tests. This one, you want to brake on the 150 board, get the car in, start turning in towards that curb, patience mid-corner, and then gently introduce that power. The back end really will want to kick round, as you can see, so it's about keeping that in check, gently applying the power, maximising the track limits on the exit, driving straight to the line, and that was good enough by about 0.4 of a second. As we move on to IB2, this one was quite tricky. This one's awkward. I've never been the biggest fan of Willow Springs. On my first try, we managed to get a gold, but this kind of shows you how easy it is to overcook this, because this car isn't, you know, the best on brakes. So here's my full run, and through this long right to begin with, you can't quite take it flat, so you are going to have to lift off slightly just to keep the nose pointed towards the inside, as you see the Ghost going quite wide. Braking here between the 200 and 150 whilst turning right. Just make sure the car is going in towards the corner, aiming towards that point on that curb. And yeah, it's just really a case of trail braking, so braking whilst turning towards the corner, turning in, and that should get you nicely poised for that exit of that corner. Master IB3, again another rally one. There's quite a few of these around the new snow circuit. This one is the first corner, and as you can see, there was many occasions where I was pushing a bit too hard and running the gauntlet on the wall on the outside. But here was my best attempt. There's a big canister thing on the left hand side there, and I kind of use it as a reference to turning in and braking. So you kind of want to be on the outside of that blue line, but obviously not hitting the wall, and that's a nice line through that first corner. You really get good speed if you do that. And here, really keep it to the right hand side, so drive deliberately slowly there to sacrifice the speed to get a good exit through the left, really powering out nice and early, maximising the track once again, all the way up the hill to the finish, and that was 0.8 faster than gold. So it's really about maximising the track through the first corner and then getting good exit speed. The fourth test in International B brings us to Suzuka. A fast set of consecutive corners in the Honda NSX. I mean, it has to be the Honda NSX around this track. And as I related to at the beginning, having a Ghost is really useful, as you can see exactly where you're winning and losing against it. And, you know, I already had a goal by this point. I just wanted to go a little bit quicker. And here it's about getting to the right-hand side, lifting off slightly, but you can get back on the power by mid-apex, just to really get good drive off of the corner and carry the speed all the way around to the finish. So that's a 29.3, 0.3 faster than gold, and that one took me a couple of goes, but not... Actually, no, I did it first try, but that was my third attempt, that particular lap. Master IB5, so this is Watkins Glen hairpin in a very heavy and clunky car, braking roughly on the 400 board, maximise the curb, really go over that curb, that one as well. Even on the exit here, you can run two wheels into the grass. And so it's really about absolutely abusing the track limits as much as possible. Patience on this long right-hander before getting back on the power. You can use a bit of the curb on the exit, back over to the right, braking before the 200 board, just before, whilst turning in towards the apex. So don't try to be too clever and turn in too late, just head towards the apex. And then patience mid-corner. This one, you want to brake just before the 100 board, about 150 metres in, whilst turning in towards the apex. Patience mid-corner, for releasing the power in third gear. And I'd love to know how many times I've said patience and maximise in this video so far, but it's probably over 1 million. That was gold by about a second before we move on to IB6. So Maggiore final sector in the Porsche Cayman. Now, to begin with, I just completely misjudged this corner and went way too wide. So that was a retry. Also misjudged this, as you've got to watch out for that sausage curb. It can be quite awkward. And also on the final corner, this was one of my attempts and I went quite wide. And that line doesn't seem too bad, but there's so much more curb you can take on the inside. So I just thought I'd show you that before I show you my full attempt. So that was a gold anyway, but let's take a look at my best lap. Make sure you commit nice and early here. Slight lift just to get the nose in. Keep it to the left, and then through this right, you can really maximise the grass. Keeping two wheels, your left wheels on the curb and then right wheels on the grass. Braking before the 50. Again, being patient mid-corner, waiting for the car to settle. And here, again, same sort of thing. Getting the car towards the apex, power out of the corner, really focus on the exit speed. I'm level with the Ghost at this point, but I know I can get the final corner a bit better. To really aim for that curb, really get all over it, get the power on, maximise the tarmac on the exit, and then it's a straight run to the line. And that one was a 43.9, 6 tenths quicker than the gold. Before we move into IB7, Maserati MC20 at Spa. This is a very fast car, not the best brakes. Braking on the 150, sorry, and that should get you into that apex quite nicely. Keeping it nice and gentle, nice and smooth. Over to the left here, up to 4th for the exit of the Lake Hume chicane, and that seemed to be a nice line, really focusing on the exit speed, getting away from the Ghost. Now here, I think I braked a little bit too late, but squaring off the corner, if you do this, just come back for that late apex and then drive off the corner quite nicely. In 4th gear. 4th gear seemed to be the best gear for this one, just to really get the stability on the exit of the corner. And again, driving straight to the line. That was more than a second to the good. 38.9. The requirement was a 40. IB8. This one's quite tricky. It's the BMW M2 competition in the wet at Suzuka, and this car really wants to slide, obviously in very greasy conditions. So I turned traction control onto 1. I felt like that helped. It's really about keeping the car nicely poised. You have to really react to the car sliding very early. Don't let it slide a huge amount because you will lose time quite quickly. So you have to be diligent with your steering, but also with your power input. Just be nice and gentle applying the power. But with traction control on 1, that certainly helps a lot. This was my fastest attempt at 30.2. It was quite a tricky test. I definitely didn't do it first time. IB9, we're back at Lake Louise, and this is the reverse circuit in the Porsche 959. Now, through this first corner, as we hinted at in earlier tests, it's really about maximising the banking, and I was able to do that on this first try, getting a gold, but I was really trying to push and really push and push and push, tried to maximise that, but I couldn't quite do it until this attempt. I would say the Gran Turismo banner there is quite a good reference for turning in and braking. So you do need to go quite high on that banking, but obviously you run the risk of hitting the wall. So just keep trying that one, and I think you'll get it eventually. And then through here, it's just once you're on the power, you just need to be on it all the way to the finish. Try to approach the finish from the left to minimise the travel distance to the finish line. And that was that, 7 tenths to the good. Easily a gold medal. We get to the final exam then of International B, so IB10, the Lexus LFA at Fuji, the final sector, so a difficult set of corners here. You're looking for the marker board on the right hand side before the Dunlop banner. It's the 150 board, braking in a nice straight line before heading over the curb, 2 wheels on the green, 2 wheels on the red and white, and again here on the curb, on the exit, you can really straight line that to get maximum speed on the exit. Through here I was a bit wide, just letting the car rotate mid-corner, and in these road cars you really do have to be quite patient. Running wide here before letting the car come back for this late apex, getting the power on the exit, all over the curb, back to the left for a better run. Now go down to 2nd gear for better rotation, but then back to 3rd for better acceleration on the exit. And again, running the curb on the exit, you can really run quite wide there. So that was quite a smooth run. No dramas at all. 52.8. Keeping it nice and smooth, nice and sensible, not inducing too much steering on the car. And that was good enough for gold. That was good enough to acquire the International B license and, of course, the Lexus LFA for free. So don't buy this car in the Brand Central. If you want to save some money, you can just get it for free by doing this test. We're on to International A. This is the first one, and this one was quite tricky, quite a difficult test here in a very oversteery, snappy car on a difficult section of this track. Now, first attempt was not a gold. I did manage to improve my exit on the final corner there and then get a gold, but here is my best attempt. So braking just before the change of tarmac on the left, getting the car towards the apex, coming off the power. You don't need to go fully to the left here because it doesn't give you a good entry to this left-hander over the brow of the hill. Braking before the curb on the left, getting all over the curb on the right. And as we head down the S's, the car actually does have a decent amount of grip here. Up into fourth gear for more stability. You can use some grass on the left to carry more speed. And on the right, if you want, get the car into that entry quite early and really go over that curb on the exit. You do have to make the most of that. And that one was a 32.9, so I was quite happy to dip below the 33s. IA2 takes us back to Grand Valley Highway on quite a tricky set of corners here. You see, you can easily get invalidated. I mean, that one was quite obvious. But you do need to take a bit of gravel on the inside, but obviously not as much as I just did there. So here's my full run. Let's take a look. So first set of corners, going in quite narrow, but then bringing the car back for this late apex. This car is quite floaty, quite slidey. It's a classic car, and therefore you do have to really wait for the momentum to get around. You know, wait for the car to slowly turn. It's quite a cumbersome thing. So you do have to drive quite accordingly to that. As we finish this one, 26.0. That was actually quite a fun test. I actually quite enjoyed driving that. Moving on to the next one, IA3. This one was actually quite difficult, and I was not able to do it first try. In fact, it took me about 5 goes to get this one as a gold. So here's my first attempt. Braking at the 100 meter board. Actually, it's not my first attempt. It's like my third or something. I got that one completely wrong. You can also, of course, hit the walls, so watch out for that. So maximising the walls as much as possible, of course, but not hitting them. So here, braking under the 100, the car will want to squirm and fight against you, but back on the power to really make full use of the track. Get yourself a better angle, and then through here, through the right, get yourself over to the right as you enter the left. This gives you a better angle and you can carry more speed through the corner. So just experiment with that one. And again, if you have a ghost, it's quite useful just to use as a reference point. On to IA4, Nürburgring Nordschleife in the SLR McLaren. I'm getting vibes from Mission 34 back in the day. But on my first attempt, managed to get a 50.8. Now this again is a fast, powerful supercar, and therefore it's quite clunky. You do have to be patient with this one. With this first sequence, a very slow set of corners here at the Nürburgring Nordschleife, exiting in third gear for traction, and you see the car wanting to squirm away from me. Braking just as you get around that right-hander, off the brake, release the brake, in third gear, back on the power. Make sure you get to the left-hand side here, turning the car in, getting on the power by the time you get to the apex, and again, the rear end will want to brake away from you. You do have to be quite patient with this one. The car isn't the fastest at turning in, so you do have to turn in maybe a bit earlier than you think. Flat out through the left, and then braking just before the blue dot on the track. Getting into that apex quite nicely, maximising the track limits on the exit, and then driving straight on the left-hand side to the finish. 49.7, so nearly 2 seconds better than the gold requirement time. Moving on to IA5. This one a bit slower. It's around Bathurst in the Skyline, and again it's really about just keeping the car nicely poised, under control, not sliding it too much, braking there, release it a bit and then brake again, keeping the car close to the wall on the right hand side to give you a better dip down on that left hander and getting some good power on the exit. So for this right hander coming up, look for the barrier on the right, you see the wall changes to blue, and that's kind of your braking point as we get the car nicely sliding through that final corner, back on the power, driving straight to the line, and it's good enough by half a second. So it's really about keeping the car nicely poised, keeping it nice and smooth and tidy, and maximising the track once again. Now this was a very different test. I was able to do this quite easily first time. My main advice is just watch my throttle input at the bottom to the right hand side of the gear counter. I basically never go on full throttle. So this one is really about tuning down your inputs. So really don't put big inputs into the car on your throttle, on your brake, on your steering. It's about keeping it really, really minimalistic, because this is very slippery. You're not on wet tyres here. You're on road tyres, so it's not very grippy at all. So it's just a case of keeping this car as straight as possible. You really do not want to be getting sideways, as the track goes weirdly dark there, a bit of a glitch. But we finish, and that was good enough by 1.2 seconds. And so I was quite happy with that to do that first try. Just really turn down your inputs. IA7 Super Formula, so very grippy car. This is like the complete opposite of the test we just did. I put the brake bias to the front, although I'm not sure it matters a huge amount. So this is my first attempt, coming through the hairpin in first gear, and I can assure you that is not what you want to be doing. But through the final couple of corners, the last two corners here are flat out, so you should be fully committed through those last two turns. Now, I was able to get a bronze first try, because that was quite an awful attempt. But here's my main attempt, braking on the 100-meter board, turning in first gear for rotation, but back up to third for the exit. That gives you really good traction. Through this right-hander, exiting in third or fourth. Fourth seems to give you more stability. Third is doable as well, but I think fourth is the easiest. And again, through the final two turns, easily flat out, just again, really drive over the full extent of the track to make sure that you can do it flat out. But that was 1 second faster than the goal time, so it's really about carrying the speed and getting the good gearing on the exits. IA8 brings us back to Grand Valley once again. Quite a slow supercar, a classic supercar, and so be patient here. Braking just before the 200 board, I'd say about 250 metres before the corner. Trail braking into the turn. Waiting. Through this left-right chicane, you kind of want to dip your inside wheels onto the bottom of the curb. And on the exit here, you can get on the power, dip two wheels beyond the white line, but be careful there, you can easily invalidate the lap. Through this right, you should be flat. Through this left, you might want to lift a tiny bit, turning in on the edge of that shadow. And then it's a hard turn in because you can't quite see it as the lighting changes, but just turning in on the end of the shadow, then back on the power kind of before you know it, and it should be fine. That was a 38.5. Moving to IA9, once again back at Lake Louise. They do quite like testing us on the snow. This one is the long looping right-hander, the final sector of the track pretty much. This one you really want to throw it in over that crest. Just get on the power, get on the power to really keep that back end round. Keep the nose pointing towards the inside of the corner. Through this left, I kind of ride that one quite high, but it is off camber, so it will throw you quite wide. Braking nice and early here, and again, just keep that nose pointed towards the inside. And I like to exit this corner on the left, as you can see. This gives me a better run and a better exit line through the right hand of the final corner. And after a couple of tries here, this took me 3 tries, I was able to get a gold, and this was my best time, 46.5. So pretty happy with that in the end. And the final test brings us back to the Nürburgring Nordschleife. This one is quite a fearsome test. I actually really enjoyed this one. I had quite a lot of fun with it, despite all of these crashes. This one through Plants Garden, the car really getting completely away from me. You definitely want to ride the Kleiner Carousel there. You don't want to miss it. So this is my best run, and it's really about gear choice and getting on the power nice and early. Third gear on the exit, you see they're running completely over the curb as we head downhill, up into fourth gear, over the jump, and then in fourth gear, waiting, back on the power. This left should be flat out. There's so much grip in this car. Down the hill, this section, the Stefan Beloff S, should be flat out. I run the grass slightly, you do lose a bit of time doing that. But through this right, you can really carry a lot of speed. Look how much speed you can carry. Get in quite narrow quite early for this left. Get over the curb on the exit. And again, through the Kleiner carousel, get in nice and early. It's really easy to drive wide there. And then through Galgenkopf, the final couple of corners, third gear, really throw it in. And then again, there's so much grip in this car, up to fourth gear. I could have gone even quicker there. But it's really about trusting the grip of the car. There is a lot of grip, and then using the correct gears. And that was good by 2.5 seconds. And I was actually very happy with that time. In fact, it was more than good enough for gold. And after that, we now have the International A license. So as ever, we get gifted the car we use in the final exam. So the 962 Porsche, very cool car to have. But if you want to watch the super license, that will be out in another video. If you have any comments or any questions, please do comment down below. But thank you so much for watching. Catch you next time. Goodbye.